Hi, everyone. I'm Deena Manwala. I'm a senior product manager at Microsoft. I'm also a former founder. I've run an edTech accelerator, and I have a long history of working in edTech as a product leader. Today, Corleen, Ellie, and I are excited to share with you our journey from job council to peer council. The three of us, along with four other amazing women, have created a community where we've supported each other through all the ups and downs of career and job searching. And then we've continued to support each other as we've grown into our new roles. I'm going to let Corleen and Ellie introduce themselves, and then we're going to dive right in. Corleen.
I'm Corleen Hyde-Gherkin. I'm a director of product at Glassdoor. I support our employer tools and I help our employers tell their authentic stories so that job seekers can find a company they love. I've also worked at everything from a 8-person startup all the way to a multi-billion-dollar company, and am passionate about the craft of product and innovation. Ellie?
Thanks, Corleen. Hi, I'm Ellie Williams. I'm VP of Product and Design at Commerce Hub. We're a B2B SaaS company that connects retailers, big box retailers, with brands and suppliers for various dropship and marketplace programs. And I'm excited to dive into this talk and tell you guys how each of us landed where we are today.
In our discussion today, there are three main takeaways that we'd like you to take from the session. First, how to form your council. We'll give you lots of tips and tricks and share what worked for us, and hopefully you can take those learnings and create your own council. Secondly, we'll give you insights into both the tactical and emotional side of supporting each other. For example, what rituals we set up, and how we supported each other and continue to support each other both emotionally and professionally. And last, we'll talk about how we evolved to a peer council and how we continue to support each other after we've all moved on and gotten new jobs. So first, I wanted to mention the inspiration for all of this. It came from Phyl Terry, who is a keynote speaker of this conference. One of our members met Phyl through an organization called Collaborative Gain, and Phyl was writing a book called Never Search Alone. The premise of the book is really that job searching is very lonely, and you need a support group of fellow job seekers that will help keep you accountable and motivated and really emotionally stable through the process. So he was working on this book, and one of the members connected with him, and she decided to give it a try. When we formed the group, we aligned around some basic principles. First, we were all women in product at roughly the same career level and roughly the same stage in our career search journey. And with all that in common, where we deviated from each other was really around industry vertical. Some were focused on e-commerce, some fintech, some edtech. And even though a few of us might have been looking in the same industry, it wasn't competitive. Some of us were focused on IC roles, some focused on management roles. We were also really distributed in terms of geo, and none of that seemed to matter. We were still able to support each other in a very meaningful way because of the commonalities that we had. The other thing that was really important to us was the size of the group. We had a minimum of 4 people to kickstart, but we never really let it get bigger than around 8 people. If it gets too big, it becomes less intimate. And it was that small group community and our shared backgrounds that really allowed us to be vulnerable with each other. And even though we started off as complete strangers, we were able to bond really quickly. Here are a few tips for how to start your council. First, don't be afraid to cold outreach to people. As I mentioned, we were all strangers before we formed our council, so knowing people in advance doesn't need to be a prerequisite. Also, really leverage your first acceptors to help recruit others. They have their networks and they can help you grow. And finally, wait until you have at least those first 4 people in the group before you host your kickoff, because you want that kickoff to be a really meaningful experience. There are lots of product communities where you can reach out to form a council. There's the Reforge Slack group, Lenny's newsletter Slack group, On Deck Collaborative Gain. Additionally, there's the Women in Product Facebook group, which many of you are probably already on. Our founding member reached out to several of us on the Executive Women in Product Slack group, and she recruited many of us there. These are all great communities where you can find and recruit folks.
So speaking of Slack, let's talk a little bit about the tools and rituals that we set up to support us in our job search. So we started by setting up a private Slack group, and we set up multiple channels to keep everything organized. So as part of that, on a daily basis, we would post job postings, articles that helped out with the job search or anything else relevant or any other resources. Intro requests were an important part of this. We know that it's helpful to get a warm intro to get past the recruiting systems, but also just to have an exploratory conversation to learn about a company's culture, or maybe find out about job postings that aren't actually posted. And then, of course, quick updates. Now, on a weekly basis, this is where we try to get together where we could. That wasn't always possible because many of us were also working full-time during this. So if you couldn't make the weekly update, everyone still had to post an async update in Slack. Now, getting back to that weekly update where we got together, we utilized Zoom. And instead of going around in a circle where everyone would give a 10-minute update, we used a hot seat approach. So we picked one or two people who really wanted to talk through some of their problems or challenges that they were having. And we used a coaching mentality to help each other through that. Now, in addition, as needed, we did a lot of other things. We worked on interview prep, whether it's doing mock interviews with each other, sharing different questions that we were seeing as we went through interviews. Everything we could to support interviews was its own channel. We reviewed and improved each other's take-home assignments that came up. And then we shared offers and comp. So Glassdoor has a lot of really great information, but this made it all hyper-local to really make sure everything's equitable. Every industry, size of company pays something different. But by bringing a group of peers together, we can see what each other are seeing as information from recruiters all the way down to offer letters and hold each other accountable to make sure we're pushing each other. And then finally, again, just being able to answer questions, provide feedback along the way. So I would be really curious to hear from all of you, what resonates with you for your job search, or what things do you think might be missing that you'd want to collaborate with other job seekers on? Please put your comments in the chat. While you're doing that, let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits that came out of this. The number one benefit that people don't talk about enough is emotional support and normalizing failure. The reality is you're going to get ghosted by some companies. You're going to have interviews that have questions that come out of nowhere, and maybe you won't do so well. All these different things happen, but it happens to everyone. And by being in a group, you get that support to know it's not just you. In fact, one of my favorite mantras that came out of this group was, it's not a no to you, it's a yes to someone else. And Ellie will talk a little bit about how we normalized all the different things that happen behind the scenes. The next is accountability. So one is just to keep pushing you through a process that can honestly feel a bit grueling at times. But also, if you go back to some of the other keynote conversations, this whole concept of your nukin, which helps you identify what you're really going after. Your peers can help you make sure you're not just taking a job offer because you're exhausted and you finally have one, but it's because it's the right fit for you. And then also getting back to equitable pay. I talked about this a couple minutes ago, but it is so important as women that we work together and boost each other up to make sure we're all getting what we deserve. And not just pay, but making sure that we're pushing on things like benefits or other things that you might need to be successful in your job. Going back to what Deena talked about with Phil's book, there's some really great tips on making sure you have things like budget or other things that are going to make you successful. And last but certainly not least is celebrating wins. There's some great stories out there about, our members like popping bottles of champagne for each other, and just really celebrating, because we all know how hard we've worked together to get to where we've gotten. Now, going through all of this has helped us to really develop trust. And ultimately, that's what helps us move past being a job search council to a peer council.
That's right, Corleen. And I'll talk a little bit about our evolution to a peer council. I do think it was the trust, the sharing of each other's failures, and the weekly check-ins that laid this strong foundation for us to be able to evolve into a peer council. I think going into this in June of 2021, I don't think any of us expected that this would have been the outcome, or that we would have, lasted as a group this long and continued on to this. So it was a unexpected but very pleasant surprise. And I think one of the reasons that happened is, as humans, we tend not to forget the people that help us during times of struggle. And so as you're going through a job search, it's very easy to lose perspective of just the wider picture, everything that's going on. And it's very easy to sort of begin blaming yourself, and which doesn't help matters. So one of the great things about going through a job search with a group of people is that even though you can all start out at the same time and you go through all these twists and turns and loops and back steps and one step forward, two steps back, everybody's journey is going to look slightly different. And so one of the other unexpected things, at least for me, was I didn't expect to become as invested in the other members' success as I did. So even after I had accepted an offer, I thought it was interesting that I still came back week over week to find out how everyone else was doing on their search journey. And I would share a little bit about like what I was going through, but mostly I was like, hey, I want the update. I want to see how Deena's doing. And what I found very rewarding for me is that once you're out of the job search journey, you do have greater perspective. In my case, I was put in a position where I had to then hire a bunch of people very quickly. I had to like form a product team, very quickly scale it. And so all of a sudden I was thrown into a situation where I was doing, dozens of interviews a week. And when you're on the other side of it, you get more perspective and you understand, you see all these other factors and influences that go into making a hiring decision that when you're in the job search, you kind of forget about. And so it was great for me to be able to come back to the group and remind them. And in a way, these are things that I wish I could have gone back and told myself, but going through the group, I could vicariously do that. Like, hey, it might not even be you. There's just all these other things happening behind the scenes that you're just not privy to. So don't let that get you down. All right, so this was a fun exercise for me. I got to go through and kind of map our journey as a group. And as you can see on this timeline, I know there's a lot going on here, but the lavender bubbles represent when a new member joined the group. And as you can see, we started in June, and I think by the time, even though it might take a little bit of effort to get the momentum going, by the time we had scheduled like our kickoff call in July, I think 3 new members had joined like within that time period. And then our last member joined, I believe, in November of 2021. And as you can see, the majority of the job offers that were accepted happened in the back half of 2021. We had one in early 2022, and then one member actually had accepted her second offer in late 2022. And so everybody, for the most part, people had already accepted their offers, but we kept meeting, which I thought was interesting. And I'd say our real, like, if I had to pick one defining moment for when we evolved into a peer council, I would say it was actually doing the Women in Product peer coaching circle. So everything felt very organic and natural. We were like helping each other on board. But that was kind of a defining moment because we added real structure and kind of reset what the purpose of our group was. So highly recommend that if you're in the situation and have that opportunity, take it. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting that I wanted to include on the timeline was I thought it was interesting that I felt so close to these women, like we were sharing such intimate details of our professional lives. And just a reminder that none of us had actually met in IRL until February of 2023. So that was a highlight because it was the first time two of our members got to meet in person. And we'll be watching this, I believe, in May of 2023, even though my timeline only goes up to March. So that will be 1 month from our 2-year anniversary. And I think we're all still very excited and jazzed about continuing this group. And it was just a very unexpected but pleasant surprise coming out of this council. So you might be wondering, what after you accept the offer, what else could you be meeting about? What else could you like? Where's the value? And there's actually a ton of things that happen, even from the time you receive the offer. And Corleen touched upon this, but there's really no better group. I know a lot of us turn to like family or friends and trusted people to help us evaluate offers. But really your peers in the same level as you going through this are really the best source of comparison and can help you also determine what it is that you want to ask for additionally. We all know that you shouldn't just like accept the first offer, that you need to come back we can collectively look at it and say, hey, this is a really good offer. You should ask for equity or ask for a coach or something of those sorts. So these are things though that when you're like in the thick of it, it's hard to kind of remember. So it's great to have peers to help you evaluate and know what to ask for, what's reasonable to ask for. Some of the other things that we shared during the onboarding period of when people were, going through it was this course from Northwestern was shared. It's a great course, highly recommend it. This actually happens to be, since I was one of the earlier ones to accept an offer, my 30, 60, 90-day plan got circulated around and just enhanced as it went along. So it was great to see that as well. So one of the things was, hey, when you first join a company, you're learning the business strategy, but you also should be evaluating it, especially as a product person, evaluating the strategy that you have to then translate into product strategy. And one of the things that like I knew of, but just in the thick of it, I just forgot was, hey, is the actual strategy the right strategy for the situation that's going on? And I remember the STARS model was something that was just like, even though I had heard of it, I just had completely forgotten of it. That was, hey, a reminder, like which of these situations for me to help evaluate are you in? And it was, it was very useful at the time. And then this is sort of the, after we all were onboarded, where are we now? And I think now we're in this very virtuous cycle of just continuous challenges to learnings, just going around and watching all of us sort of encounter new struggles, things that we, some of us expected, things that we hadn't expected. The layoffs this year were certainly, luckily nobody in our group was directly impacted, but we definitely all felt it at our companies and watched, like I had team members that were affected. So in some ways we were all, affected by it. But so just talking through offshoring, we've definitely had a lot of changes in management throughout the group, struggles with leveling up reports, strategic pivots, all the things that come up. And I can't say enough how valuable it is to have this group to come reconnect with. Also too, one of the things that I wouldn't have thought of, but I found so valuable is the sharing of artifacts. Just having, you're tasked with, hey, go create this deck to communicate the strategy, and just having a starting place, even if it's not, your exact domain, or like, you have to tweak things for your company culture. Just having an outline when you go to start just makes, cuts the amount of effort that you have to put in half. So I've personally found the sharing of the artifacts very valuable. And then the other thing I will say that I just like a very tactical thing that I've noticed is that as we've grown and encountered more challenges as a group and more learnings, so too have our Slack channels. And now we're at the point where we're like, hey, maybe we should upgrade to the paid version because we want to go back and see some of the things that were shared or the past 90 days that we no longer have access to. So it's really a great like visual representation of all that we've gone through and shared with each other, and all the growth that's happened, really. So really, my one sort of takeaway for those watching is, I don't think anyone starts a job search or is excited to start a job search. I think it's all, I've never heard anybody say, yes, I'm so excited to job search. But I think one way to kind of reframe it for yourselves is, it's an opportunity to create a group like this that could then have the potential to evolve into a peer group. And it is actually, I keep coming back to that idea of like, those people that help you during times of struggle, again, are generally people you don't forget. And I think that really has an impact on, the commitment level to the group going forward. So I'll pass it off to Deena for more takeaways.
Thanks, Ellie. And yeah, thanks, Corleen. You represented this group so well. Just wanted to summarize a few key takeaways from our talk. Really, when you're thinking about forming a job council or a peer council, really think about what those guidelines are for what you want in your council. And then don't be afraid to use all of your networks to reach out to folks to kickstart the council. Have really great rituals in place for accountability, emotional support, and really celebration. And then, it organically happened for us, but we really encourage you, once folks start to get jobs, and even when everyone in the group has a job, to evolve into a peer council, because we found a ton of support from each other through that experience. It's really just, our job council turned peer council has had an incredible impact on the trajectory of our careers. And we've really formed an especially unique bond, and we really want that experience for everyone. And so that's why we did this talk. So we really encourage you to give it a shot. Please feel free to reach out if you have further questions, and best of luck in forming the network of support. Thank you.